Hello, and welcome back to brAVe Skills, the practical offshoot of the brAVe Space podcast, where on this show, we like to focus on the topics of leadership, corporate culture, and how those things intersect and interact with the tech industry overall, especially the AV industry, the professional audiovisual industry, which we're a part of. My co-host Britt is not on the show, so you've just got me, Leon, today, but we wanted to re-release one of our favorite episodes, which was the 4th episode of the show, all about balance, specifically work-life balance. And we thought that this would be a good one to revisit now because it's still as timely as it was when we first released it. We know that everybody deals with the topic of work-life balance or work-life integration, as we call out. And the balance of priorities can be challenging for anyone, we think, whether you're a big L leader or a little L leader, as we like to say. So we're going to cover topics like or questions like, how do you know if the balance is off? Or where does data fit in? How do we rectify the balance or the integration if we think it's off? Where does delegation fit into all that? Ultimately, the way that we manage this, we find is pretty much completely up to the person, but halfway through the episode, we also get pretty personal ourselves. The topic was actually so big that we decided to split this into 2 episodes. So we have a second episode all about burnout that we also think that you want to check out as well. But for now, we hope you enjoy this revisitation of episode 4 called The Great Balancing Act.
Hello, AV Tweeps and AV Tweeps adjacent. Welcome to brAVe Space, or in this case, brAVe Skills. brAVe Skills is a practical offshoot of the brAVe Space podcast, where we explore some of the topics most impactful to the world of business, corporate culture, and leadership. I'm Britt.
And I'm Leon. And like we said, we want to focus on skills with this show. So we hope that something that we convey in this episode is helpful for you, or by extension, someone you know.
Before we get started here, we have 2 disclaimers for you. The first is that opinions expressed in this podcast are our own and not necessarily representative of our institutions, companies, or sponsors of the show. And the second is that we appreciate listeners' grace and understanding as we tackle topics we're not necessarily experts in.
So now, on to the episode.
All right, so here in episode 4 of brAVe Skills, we are talking about balancing workload and life because we all chase the concept of achieving work-life balance, but we don't necessarily have practical ways to do that, especially when we are in a position of some sort of leadership.
Yeah, the thing that stands out for me about this topic and why I feel like it's probably one that's not only timely but maybe timeless is I think this is an issue or a concept that we will always be relevant. I think it's incredibly relevant for leaders, but I think it's really just relevant across the board. And some of the things that make this more relevant today, I think, is that we're in a post-COVID world. So in 2020, COVID-19 did what COVID-19 did, and we all started having questions about what does work-life balance look like when all of a sudden people are working from home more, what people are becoming more demanding of their institutions as well when it comes to supporting this idea of work-life balance. But also there's been a lot more focus, I think, not right away in 2020, but shortly after, a lot more focus on the individual's aspect or the individual's kind of responsibility to manage that. Because when you are working from home a lot, you've got your dog like Swayze, who was just here with us on your end, or your children, or your spouse, or whoever. You've got those things pulling on you in a way that they wouldn't necessarily when you had a very clear separation between the physical space where you worked and the physical space where you do life, I suppose.
Mhm.
And so I don't know that anyone has this all figured out, but I think it's a great topic for us to be continually revisiting for ourselves and continually evaluating. But I think I'd like to ask you the same question here because I don't know that everyone has the same answer, but what do you feel like we mean, or what do you mean when you say work-life balance?
Yeah, and that's a good question for me because I actually personally don't like to use the term work life balance for myself. Because to me, when I hear balance, I picture this concept of scales, and
Mhm.
they're balanced where like work and life are always fair and it always makes sense. And that's just not the life that I find myself living. So I like to think of work life integration instead, knowing that my work is a part of my identity. It's a part of who I am, but it's not the be all end all. Obviously, I also have this life component. So I consider, how does my work integrate with my whole being, and being mindful of not allowing that integration to like have work overtake the life piece. And
Mhm.
it's kind of recognizing like sometimes one will be more heavy than the other. Sometimes I'll be working a little bit harder than I'm playing, or vice versa. And I just kind of have hit a comfort level with that. But what about
Mhm.
you?
I am very much in the same camp. Another reason why I think it's an interesting topic is I also don't believe that it is a 50-50 kind of balance. Work
Mhm,
life balance, work hyphen life balance. It sounds like there's just two things going on.
mhm,
Really, in my mind, I think more of it as life balance.
mhm, mhm,
That work is just something you do in your life. It's something that we do for a lot of our lives, right? A lot of us work a 9 to 5, so it's an 8 hour day or whatever your shifts are. That's a third of your waking, or sorry, that's a third of a day is spent,
right.
generally speaking, doing. It's so it's not separate from life; it's part of life. So I love that you said integration there. Where I think about it a lot is it's the idea of a life balance is something that I need to look at. There is a balance of time, and a balance of energy, but that doesn't necessarily look the same for all people, and it doesn't look the same at all points in the year.
Mhm,
I've worked a job where I took the job years ago. I took the job where I worked in a museum, and we were doing a lot of installations. Apart from all the other things involved with AV as well that were happening there, but we were sometimes going to be in what we would call exhibit season. We were not always building giant permanent installations. Sometimes they were smaller, but there was a period of time leading up to any exhibit opening where it would be a more all hands on deck across the board, regardless of who you were or what your role was. You're just going to be probably spending a little bit more time at that time. And we had a whole year where we only had like one exhibit season, and then the next one where we didn't really, because we were just doing refreshes. And so there was an ebbing and a flowing on periods of times or seasons where it seemed
mhm.
like one part of my life was getting more of my waking hours and more of my attention and focus than another. Um, but I think another another question here is if this is an individual thing. And I think we should recognize that it is. A lot of data sometimes suggests that we're just way off in our work life balance. And I don't really know that I feel the same way. Like I've got a number here that workday length is sometimes 6.1 hours. Like that's kind of an average length of a typical employee workday. In my brain, I'm going, really? Mine are way longer.
Yeah.
Or sometimes going to the evening. I've got, there are people doing half an hour of meetings per week that are after hours and doing emails after hours and all of these things.
Mm.
It's You could just say that those are stats. I think the question is, are we happy with this with the stats though? Are we happy with that for ourselves and what that looks like for you? So the question I want to ask is we say there's a balance or an integration. What signals for us that something might be off in the way that integration is happening, that we might want to make some kind of adjustment to that for you personally?
Yeah, for me personally, and we're gonna, I think, dedicate an episode to burnout. But for me, I know the integration is off if I start to feel the symptoms of burnout, or
Mhm.
if I start to feel just kind of this general unease or dissatisfaction with my life. Where, if I sit down and really think about how I'm spending my time, and it starts to feel like I'm spending too much time doing this work related task or work related things, and now it's not sitting right with me for whatever reason. It could be like that doesn't feel right in my body, I feel tired, or this level of work isn't aligning with my value of spending time with my family. That's when I know, hey, now this is off and I need to start readjusting my time management.
Yeah. One of the ways for me, um, similar, you start to go like, am I starting to recognize the symptoms of potential burnout? Or honestly, the way I like to put it is, does it feel like your life got out of control?
Mm,
So if your life suddenly feels like everything's getting away from you, and it's usually time. If I feel like that list of things I feel like is really important for us to be getting done, us being like just people in my life, could be me and my wife, could be me and my team at work, we're not getting to where we feel like we should. We're not satisfied with that. And it seems like we can't get our head above water. To me, that's the thing that says something might be off here in terms of the the balance. And I think our main metric of this is time. I guess energy and focus are also things to be considered here.
mm,
But in terms of time, a really easy thing that came up actually through a design thinking exercise with a web company years ago, I think, was this idea of time budgeting. I think everyone's probably done this before, but they were doing it for something besides time, and I think I've maybe just adapted it. But I actually would say to my team, when someone seemed like they were having this problem being like, I can't get things done. I don't know what's going on. I don't know if it's my home life or what. This is around, COVID time. Said, do me a favor, just write down the breakdown of your time. Just estimate, by the way. Don't like clock it to the minute. Whether it's in hours, percentages, whatever. Think about a day, think about a week, something that's easy to focus on. Talk about those big buckets. Your family time, this aspect of work, whatever. You only have 100%. You know, your cup is full to 100%. It can only be filled
mm.
to that. How much of your cup goes to those? Just be realistic, and then look at that and say, are you okay with that? Do you like the way that that looks? If you're not, okay, what do you think that should look like? Um, and it's been amazing how it's so easy for people to understand if something's off and how to change it when they have that in front of their face and go, okay, I can't really argue with that once I write it down. I can see some places where I feel like I should flex something. Um, but those signals, to go back to the question, is really about, for me, when things start to feel like they're just out of control. Like I can't seem to get my head above water one way or the other. Um, yeah, I don't know if is that something you've ever done or ever heard of. I don't honestly know if this is just some crazy cockamamie thing that I've been telling people to do and it's been working, or
No, I
what.
totally agree. And I'm a very visual person, a very hands-on person. I personally time block my calendar every day.
Hmm.
That's partially for my own sanity so I don't get overbooked. And it's partially so that I can visually see how I am spending my day and where my time is going. And if certain tasks seem to be taking too long, not long enough, what type of task it is, like
Hmm.
people have looked at my calendar and been like, I don't understand what you're doing here. Why do you do this? And I'm like, just because it's just for me to see. That's all. Color
Yeah, yeah.
coded and labeled and all that cool stuff.
Oh, she has
But
amazing notes, listeners. She has amazing notes. I love them. If you ever happen to be near her, be like, show me your notes, and you'll be like, wow, that's so cool. That honestly
thank
like
you.
puts me at peace looking at that. Um,
Yeah, yeah. You have to find a way to like find your piece, make it something that to you, you're like, I like looking at that. That makes me feel good. And it makes me feel good
Mhm.
about my work and the way I'm spending my time. Like, absolute aesthetics actually are important, I think. Um, and one thing I wonder too is like, as we do things like blocking out our time and visually seeing whatever that means to us, visually seeing how we are dedicating our time to our work tasks and everything else that we might have on our plate, if we might be prioritizing work in unhealthy ways because
Mm.
we are tying too much of our identity to work. So I'm wondering what you think about that.
That's a really interesting question. I think culture has a lot to do with this. You and I are Westerners, and I feel like I don't know how much of our audience might not be Westerners, but I think that there's a bit of a difference sometimes here where the tie to your work is so closely tied to your identity more in the East, I think, than here, but it's certainly growing more and more on this side. And I, I think there's also a nature over nurture component here where in reality, let me put it this way: when you're a kid, people ask you, "What do you want to be when you grow up?" Like they're
Mhm.
already asking you that question, but they don't say, "What do you want to do?" You ever think about that? They say, "What do you want to be?"
Mhm.
Right? Not, "I want to do medicine. I would like to do doctor work." It's, "What do you want to be?" That's an identity thing.
Yeah.
You start to get into high school, and I think at that point, I think a lot of people have started looking left and right and going like, "Wait, is this healthy what we're about to do with high school students?" Where we're saying to them, "Choose right now the direction of your life, because it's gonna be too hard later." That's the message. That's not me knocking college. That's not me knocking any of those things. It's just the way we talk about it.
Mhm.
I do think that we maybe set ourselves up for failure by expressing really, really early on, um, for men, for women. I think, on the male side, I think maybe a lot of times it's about your work. On the female side, traditionally, a lot of times it's like, do you want to be a mom, kind of thing, and
Mhm.
that's like the thing, or be a wife or whatnot. Like that's really common. Maybe less so today, but that's still in some places pretty common. Um, what I will say as far as just my opinion though, there's danger in tying yourself for me, there's danger in tying my work too closely to my identity because my work is actually always going to change. And I
Mhm.
realize that. So if I tie my identity to my work and that's something that's always changing and not really a firm foundation, that kind of lends itself to identity crisis
Mm.
pretty easily because what happens when that work changes? Now my identity might be slightly shattered. Um, that's not a place I want to be in, so I try to be careful about that. Um, Sorry, I feel like I might be dominating. I'm gonna throw one more point in. I recently posted something on my LinkedIn about how I changed my LinkedIn about section. So, time capsule moment. I don't know what LinkedIn's gonna look like when someone's listening to this in, 2050, but um, the that section is not the section where you have kind of your tagline kind of stuff under your name. It's the part where you have like a free form paragraph or something you would write, and it looked pretty standard. Mine looked pretty standard to everyone else's. This is what I've done. This is what I've accomplished. And I'm not knocking that, but I started looking at that and saying, wait, that's not about me. That's just about what I've done. They titled the section about me. So I decided to change it. And I just wrote literally about myself, things that are true about me. They're not things that change. So nowhere in my about me section does it say what I do for a living. It doesn't say what
Mm.
my jobs are. You can see my CV. You can look down at the bottom and see that. Why would I say that 3 or 4 times? It's just me personally. Why would I say that over and over again? The about me section, I think, is actually the fun section, where I can say something like I'm a nerd or whatever. Like those things are more closely tied to who I am, I think, and so that's my defense against that issue. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I love that. And for me, I don't know because I feel like I have and we could really fall down a rabbit trail here because I feel like my job is tied to my identity. That's kind of how I justify work life integration of like,
Mm,
well, the work is just a part of my life and it's a part of it. That kind of morphed into it's a part of who I am. And now I've also built this platform of talking about what it is to be a woman in AV and uplifting other women and uplifting people who might feel marginalized in a technology industry. And when you pick up a torch like that, it's really easy to feel like this is who I am
mm,
versus this is what I do because it's so intrinsically linked to my personal values that it
mm,
starts to be
mhm,
like, okay, at what point does this get severed? Like, where does Brit Yenser end and Brave Brit begins? Or,
mhm,
things like that. So I think, honestly, I think I'm still figuring that out. And I have started to feel some of the symptoms of burnout, which is frustrating because I'm obviously very passionate about what I'm doing and I have a lot of love for it. But at the same time, I have to kind of sit and consciously remind myself that I'm a person
Yeah.
and that I have other things going on and I can't allow my life plate to pile up too much because I'm dedicating so much to the work and like work adjacent things. So, yeah, I'm
Mhm.
not going to lie, like I personally am kind of in the struggle boat a little bit.
Yeah, and I'm first off, thank you for saying that aloud. What I hope all of our listeners hear is that there's never, whenever we talk about these concepts, we're not talking about them because feel like we have them figured out. It's that they're important to talk about.
Mhm.
And hopefully, you're invited. We invite you to be open with your peer group as well about this kind of thing. In reality, I don't know, like I'm one of Britt's friends. I believe she has more as well. But what I want to say is like in this moment, I'm here sitting here as a friend of Britt, hearing this, and this is great. Hopefully, you at home have someone you're talking to as well when you have something where you're like, I'm struggling with this. Don't go it alone with this kind of thing. I think oftentimes the going it alone is part of what can lead to that feeling of burnout because it's just all on your shoulders. Um, I'm speaking to leaders out there for a second, big L and little L. If you see yourself as a leader, I want to say this. Ultimately, it's going to be a hot take. Ultimately, there's still a part that is your responsibility here, right? It's your responsibility to protect and maintain what is the right level of integration here for you.
Mm.
You have to set that. No one is going to set that for you. And in fact, if you let your job do that, that's just setting yourself up for failure. But also, it's hard saying that out loud to a leader, I think, because leaders think about responsibility so much. And so I just threw a responsibility at you. It is what it is, though. So what do we do with that? I think just recognize that while responsibility is a large part of what we probably feel and have, we should be really honest with ourselves about what the responsibility is that we put on ourselves, others put on us. Like, where is it coming from? Are we okay with it? Um, on my side, again, we're going to have a burnout episode. I have struggled. I still today have to be really mindful about it, but I've struggled far more than I do today in this moment. But I've struggled hard with this concept. Spoiler alert, you'll probably hear about it in the next episode. I've been hospitalized because of things like this. Like, this is not, I'm taking this very seriously.
Mhm.
Hopefully, everyone can catch this point. If you are burdening yourself with responsibility and putting everything on your shoulders to figure out, understand that you're also practicing something. And practice, whether intentional or not, builds muscle memory. So if you are getting so used to putting more and more on your shoulders to figure out, eventually you will become so weighed down that you also feel like it's impossible to reach up. Like your shoulders are too weighed down. You're not going to reach out for help. Don't let yourself get to that point. And also know on the empathetic side for your teams or people that you're leading, they also see the same practice that you have. So if your balance is way off, or if you're doing this kind of thing where you're just taking on more constantly and really suffering for it, and people can see that, kind of communicating that might be the expectation that others need to do as well. So there's an altruistic part to maintaining a good integration as well. So, but none of us have it all figured out. It's just something for us to continue to think on, be mindful of. 'Cause you get one life here, you know. Um, Integrate it in the way that's the best for you to do. You're not getting a do-over. you know, you don't get that time back. Don't stress about that. Just be like, well, this matters, so I'm just going to make this choice. Not everybody's going to be okay with your choice, but they don't have to be either. You do, you know?
Yeah.
Sorry, I feel like I just like took that to a really deep place, but I just wanted to speak directly to our audience for a second about that. And I feel like you kind of opened the door. So
I love that. Absolutely. Yes. 100%. And I love that you're starting to speak to the responsibility and the ownership over it and the, individual nature of it, that you have to be comfortable making a decision for you, for your family, and just kind of remembering that your employer is not your family. I don't
Mhm.
know who needs to hear that, but
Mhm.
your that's not they can call themselves your work family all they want. They're not. And I just I have a lot of feelings about that I could really go down a rabbit trail. I won't. I'm gonna pivot back to a point that I really wanted to make originally because I think it really ties to what you're saying about that responsibility and ownership piece, and it really has to do with men. I know that, like, part of my personal branding and my values, I advocate a lot for women, but I think we need to stop and recognize that according to Brene Brown, one of the shame centers for men is the responsibility to their families and being a
Mhm.
provider to their family. And I think that, yes, both women and men struggle with the concept of work life balance. One could argue that men might be struggling more or struggling in silence more than women because they feel this need to provide for others in a financial way that they're getting from work. And they feel so deeply about that. Like they're programmed to think that way to the point
Mhm.
where they might be silent about struggling with their time management or struggling with their work life balance because they feel shame to admit that
Mhm.
they're having a difficult time.
Yeah. I'm one man. I'm going to try to speak for all of us here, but I will say 1,000%. I know that that does happen. Um, I I know because it's happened to me. Um, Now, in reality, I think I've mentioned this on our program before, and I think others who know me closely know this. I have a faith that's very important to me, and so for me, I try to let a lot of my identity kind of come from values that are in that faith. I'm a Christian. However, at the same time, I still have the push and pull of yeah, but I am a man, right? And there are things that the faith says about what that might mean as well. But the world around me has an idea of what my life should be and what my life what's the most important thing to me. And one of those is being able to provide for your family. I, growing up, was in a family that did not have a lot of money. We weren't dirt poor, but we didn't have a lot of money. It was a single mom that was raising me. And one thing that she said out loud, not for negative reasons, but it was supposed to be positive, was that she wanted me to always have more than what she had growing up, and more, and so on and so forth. It's common
Mhm.
to hear that. What I heard, maybe because I'm a male, was I need to make sure that I have more than what I came from and that my family does. It was like sort of on my shoulders. I thought about that. I thought about it when it came to the conversation about like what college do I go to, what job do I go to, all that kind of stuff. And maybe that happened for others as well, whether you're male or not. But I know for me, I know where that came from. Again, not because my mom tried to stress me out about it, it's just what went in my brain. Um, and I remember actually at one point, I was fairly, I do music ministry in my church when I'm not like doing stuff like this. And something I said to actually as a pastor's wife that I knew, is that I believed that I needed to go into music ministry, that I should do something with that. And I remember she said, that's going to be a couple figures off your salary. It's the first thing that she said, and she wasn't actually trying to scare me, but I got scared.
Mhm.
She's like, "That's gonna be a couple figures off your salary." I didn't say anything about whether or not that was gonna be, like, my main vocation or anything, but I got scared of it. Um, so, yeah, the idea of having this one thing be so tied to your identity, if you aren't careful, and I think a lot of us aren't, it can become all-consuming in an unhealthy way, and it probably should not be. Now, if you're out there and what you do, similar to me and Britt actually, is something that is really closely tied to your values, that separation can be hard to make, but you also might find yourself feeling more satisfied or through work because it relates to your values. That's not unhealthy. That's not in and of itself like unhealthy, but you do have to you have to have some signals. sometimes those signals are going to come from another person. So my wife is actually my canary in the coal mine for a lot of things.
Mhm.
She'll give me a look, mention a thing, mention one. She'll say like one phrase, and I'll go, I need to, I need to think about something, don't I? She'll be like, yeah, you do. Okay, thank you for that. So yeah, I'm glad you brought that up, Britt. It is something that does exist for males, at least certainly west in the Western society. Um, that those feelings of shame, the idea of silence. There's a lot of silence in the male sphere. It's part of why I like doing this, is to be a man saying these things within earshot of anyone. And if they're men, I don't know honestly if you've heard this before, because you'd be surprised how much it's not said. So
Mm.
hopefully you're hearing it now. Hopefully you're hearing it more. And then you start to tell yourself that and hear other people say, like, it's okay not to not be okay.
Mhm.
First off, you might need help, but also you're not a failure because you're not providing in the way that you think. Um, life life is something we do together. There's partnerships involved. So I mean, if you're married, like there's a partnership there. If you got a significant other, there's a partnership there. None of these burdens really should probably sit solely on your shoulders, and you should probably check up on whether you're holding too many of those. Um, because if you don't, again, you're here once, you know?
Mhm. And one thing I'm hearing you say in that is the idea of things being on your shoulders and how you can actually lift some of that off and divvy it out to other people and be honest
Mhm.
with them about how things are going and what you might need help with. That's I think the other part of the work-life balance conversation is sometimes work-life balance might feel off because of internal factors that we've been talking about a lot. The shame center for men, the for feeling like it's so integrated into who you are that you can't find a separation, things like that. But then there's also external factors of just sometimes there's a lot of work. Are you being honest about that and are you delegating it? Like,
Yeah.
are you communicating to other people? Are you taking on more than you should? Why are you doing that? Why do you feel
Mhm.
like it needs to be you who's doing it? Can you take something off of your plate, off of your shoulders, hand it to another person and say, "Get this done." And will that make you feel better? Like, will that make you feel like you are now aligned and now a little bit more balanced?
Yeah. I I've heard that from a supervisor on 2 occasions, before, that it's something I needed to work on. That was part of what was preventing me from feeling like I had a balance I was okay with, or an integration that I was okay with, in 2 separate occasions, 2 totally different jobs. But the idea of delegation is a big one, and I think it's also, there's delegation like to employees who might be working underneath you, but there's also just people that are near you too, right? There's people that might be at the same lateral level, I guess, within a company or a team. And sometimes you just need to ask. um, there are times when the person next to you is way better at the thing that you're trying to do. Why not just leverage those skills? I've had a plumber come into my house, and I have no shame as a man to be like, I suck at plumbing. Please do the plumbing. Please, please do it. Like, I'm okay paying you to do that, versus in my mind, I value my time a certain way. And it's like, I would be spending so much more time than the money I'm spending you to tackle this in my house. In a work scenario, um, I'm really bad at design, graphical, any kind of graphical visual design. And though I've done a lot of work with video, when it comes to making animations and anything like that, I'll go to another person. Could I do it? Sure can. It's going to take me longer. Skills aren't necessarily there. It's gonna weigh me down a bit. Hey, so and so, would you mind? And they'll be like, "Oh man, I got that. I can do that in like half an hour." Awesome. Would have taken me a week. Yeah, it's a good practice.
Yeah.
Um, I actually think about a listener question we had a while ago. We talked about like work, like fit. Um, I do think there might be a red flag to think about too when you're taking new jobs. Talked about this a lot with my wife before too. Ask a lot of questions. If it's starting to seem like the expectations from this job on you are not something that you're okay with, like, be honest about that. Like, be honest about that up front. Um, ask where there might be flexibility and things like that because you are a whole person. Um, I've I've been told I've been told in this scenario, it was actually college, about, the way someone thought we were gonna spend our time. It was not possible. Do you have a music education major at the college that you work at?
I honestly don't know. We did at the one I used to work at, and now that I'm at a community college, I'm not sure because teaching's typically like a 4-year situation. We
Mhm,
probably have something that prepares you for that or is adjacent to that, but we
mhm,
also have like literally hundreds of programs. So I don't know.
gotcha. Well, I could say the story. We could maybe even save it for the burnout episode. Who knows? This may be cut. Um, but, shoot, last episode, I talked to you about high school Leon. Now I'm talking to you about college Leon.
We are
Just getting a
going
whole
on the journey of Leon's life together.
which chapter? I'll just say this. I remember that there are some college majors. Music education was one, and that's actually what I started in school doing. I know engineering is another, and I believe visual art was another, where the amount of hours that you're actually told to spend on things is actually impossible, and
Mm,
they know that. They know that, and I was in an orientation where a professor told us the amount of hours that they were asking for you to do on average per class, per all this kind of stuff. And she said, if you actually do all the math, it's not possible to do all of that. And she gave us a really good lesson. First, we went like, what are you doing? Slave drivers? We can't do that. That everything you just said totals to 28 hours in a day. We don't have 28 hours. And it doesn't make sense. The lesson that she gave us was you're about to embark on a journey as young adults of recognizing that everything is just a matter of choices at this point. You're going to just choose how you're spending that time. You cannot do what you're being asked to do. So you're going to, or being advised to find a way to do, because you're getting advice from all the different professors about what to do in their classes and all that. You're going to have to make choices on what's the balance that you want to have.
mm,
2 hours a day per instrument. In music education major, that might be, I said education, music education major, that might be 3 instruments. In my case, it was. That's 6 hours right there. We're not doing that. Not in a liberal arts school, anyway. We weren't actually doing that. So you had to figure out, how do you shift? What do you shift? What do you not do? What do you do? And have to ultimately be okay and live with the choice that you make.
mm. Yeah, I think that's a big part of this, right? Is just sitting down with yourself and figuring out what do you want your life to look like? What's important to you? How do you want to be spending your time? And if you
Mhm.
find that you are not in alignment as you answer those questions, now it's time to revisit something. And it might be a simple revisiting of, hey, let's just start time blocking and work on time management. Or it might feel like a really big thing, like I need to change my job. But
Mm.
no matter what, you have to figure out what that is. And you do need to take action because, like you said, Leon, like we die at the end of this. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
On that note, let's just stop right there. We die at the end of this. The episode's over.
Yeah, let's talk about action items. I don't even know what
Yeah,
else to
yeah, no,
say,
no, no.
so let's talk about the practical things that we can walk away doing, and
Absolutely.
maybe we don't think about death. Sorry, guys.
Mm-mm, mm-mm. Maybe I'll throw in a clip from the Barbie movie at the end of this. No, I'll get copyright struck for that. I won't do that. Oh
That would've been so
man,
good, though.
I'll just say it. You all know it. Okay.
Yeah. Alright, after we had this conversation, I definitely feel like one of the action items we can walk away with is stopping and identifying why you feel off. So figure out, is this an internal thing? Like you're tying too much of your identity to work, you're feeling that shame center that we talked about, or maybe it's a little bit more external, like there's too much work to be done. And at that point, maybe just seek some guidance and support accordingly. Leon, what else would you say is an action item for us?
Well, when we talk about this idea of work life integration, don't necessarily see work as being a negative thing. It's something that you're choosing to do. So when we're talking about this integration, make sure that somewhere in your life, in your day, you feel like you're taking the time for the things that are most important to you, not just your obligations, but what's most important to you, what's going to give you that sense of peace, what gives you that sense of recharge and fulfillment. Make time for that. Carve the time out. Time blocking, super key here, and just don't lose sight of that as a piece of what you should be blocking time for.
Yes, absolutely. And those are great ways for us to move forward together. We hope that this episode gave you something new to think about in your professional and personal journey, and maybe even expanded your perspective on your own experiences. If you have any topics you would like us to discuss on the show, you can let us know on X, LinkedIn, or the form linked in our show notes. If you liked this show, please let us know by giving us as many stars as you can manage on your podcast player of choice and leave a review. For easy updates, make sure to subscribe to brAVe Space. And remember, it sometimes is okay to think about dying.
It is. Trying it. Can I? No, see, I
Oh, is it
can't
gonna
make the
do
things
like a
pop
fancy
up.
heart thing?
I think it's
Yours
supposed
will,
to.
mine won't.
Well, my hearts are bad. I don't. We'll
Womp
find a way to
womp.
do it. I don't know. I
Just
can do this,
yeah.
except that's not working either. Wow.
I accept your whatever weird geometric heart you want to make with your hands. I accept it. But the next time we try to cover something super, super serious and you do jazz hands or whatever, we will get fireworks and we'll be like, what's happening? So,
Yeah.
Do you guys ever think about dying?
I don't know why I just said that.
I'm just dying to dance.